Soldier on, my good countrymen, keep fighting for your children now, keep fighting for your land.
Now then you move on to meat, and of course grain-fed beef amplifies every problem I've just said. Grain-fed animals, including the fact that the animal suffers, it's in slavery, in cages, pigs are the same, it's horrendous, and I completely oppose it and stand against it. And I say that it's horrible. Now I'm part of the Masai tribe. Literally I'm one of the very few white persons or Western persons, or however you want to call it, who's been sworn in as a Masai. And that's because I've lived with them 6 years, and I've been given children belonging to the tribe, special needs children, to be the guardian of, and we have a great love and respect for each other. They're our security force here. And I see with the Masai as well, you know, they don't like things to hurt and suffer, and they have a saying, a cow is as good as a man. They have a really loving symbiotic relationship with their animals, and they do dispatch them. But let me tell you, when they slaughter an animal, you have one Masai suffocating the animal so it loses consciousness, so as they never feel the blade. And while that's happening, you have other Masai Moran, fearless warriors, which they are fearless warriors, but they are holding this being, and it's emotional, and there's tears in the eyes, and they're stroking the goats and the cows as if to say, I'm sorry, you know, I know this is hurting you, but I love my children, and they're not going to eat anything without it. And that's the difference between these normal symbiotic pasture-fed animals and the modern-day carnism, where you've got people like that guy in New York, Milkhead or whatever he's, it's definitely not Milkhead, Milk someone, who was eating a raw cow head. Like the Masai would kill someone for disrespecting a being like that. Literally, they would kill them because cows are sacred to them. They find it vile that we treat them the way we do. So there's something about this loving symbiotic relationship I've seen there compared to the West. And I'm totally opposed to mass animal agriculture because there's not enough space on the planet. I'm also opposed to the nonsense of having a purely carnivore diet because there's not enough space on the planet for that. That means that people have to suffer and miss out. We also see it's causing deforestation because of demand. And here in Africa, which is not being spoken about, the #1 threat to mountain gorilla is now the demand for beef consumption in Uganda and Rwanda. So that tells you something really important. Adopting Western animal agriculture into Africa will end iconic species. It'll end elephant, it'll end mountain gorilla. It will happen. So that's why there needs to be a shift. But here the governments can see that people are healthy on around about 10% animal product predominantly. Most people are between 5 and 10% animal product, and the rest plant-based in Tanzania, except for the Masai and the Hadzabe. Well, the Hadzabe is different. The Hadzabe are hunting meat, but the women all eat predominantly root vegetables. They have different microbiomes as well because of it. So it's like the whole vegan message is really messed up at the moment, and it's because people are being so emotive. Now, slaughterhouses are wrong. It's horrible. I've just told you the way that Masai slaughter an animal. It's sad to watch, but there's an element of such deep love and respect. And the Masai, when their own cows die, can sometimes cry, compared to the European persons who order a burger and eat it. But let's think about like giving thanks to food as well. How often, I don't see many vegans giving thanks for food. I really don't. My wife and I, even if we're in a restaurant, we hold hands, we close our eyes, and we genuinely, from our hearts, give thanks. If we forget to do it before, we do it afterwards. And we do that because it's important, I think, energetically for your food as well. Water responds to emotion, and all food contains water. But the vegan movement, I see a lot of people, they just, you know, throwing it down, not realizing the damage they've created, not realizing the sacrifice that beings have made and the environment has made for them to be sustained. And it certainly isn't right for them to make that sacrifice for you to then behave like some sort of raving baboon on the internet telling people to kill themselves because they're trying something new. So veganism needs to broaden its perspective. You're telling everyone to supplement with plastic bottles, for example. Why do supplements have to come in plastic bottles? Why? Why can't we look at other more sustainable things? For instance, you could get everything you need from supplements from eggs and mollusks. And that would be a more viable solution to reduce factory farming. And the thing is as well, what you have to realize is, if you really care about reducing the slaughter of animals, you need to bring a message of love, and you need to bring it gently and clearly, because the faster you reduce the consumption of animals, the less slaughter you're going to get, you're going to have on the planet. So you would actually benefit more animals by allowing people. In my life, I used to be militant and stupid and immature like that. And then what I realised was, sometimes I said to people, why don't you try and just eat your animal product like 2 days a week or 3 days a week? And they did. And you know what? Some of those people, it increased to 1 day a week, and some went plant-based, or some stayed that way. But at least they reduced consumption of animal product, which helps the environment, less beings are suffering, and they experience health benefits. And the thing is, some people do get healthier on a vegan diet. I exchanged things when I went vegan. I could do less weight training work when I was vegan. I don't know if it's the way I was eating, but I increased my endurance stamina so I could run further. So that was a very strange thing. A lot of you don't know, I'm very close friends with Sam Smalling, who is the wife of Chris Smalling, who plays for Manchester United. And Chris has gone vegan, and he has very expensive testing going on daily. And they are seeing that he's getting more elasticity in his hamstring, etc. Now, long term, of course, we need to see what goes on, but at least you've got pro sportsmen who are seeing initial benefits from it. So it does show that even if you're going to go a little bit plant-based, because in nature, there's no way it was just meat, meat, meat. Inuits eat meat, meat, meat because they can't make fire. You know, there's no plants up there. You know, the Masai are the same. There's no plants that they can eat where they are, so they can't survive in that geographical location without the cows and the goats. So let's see where that plays out. But there's two sides to this story. Now, I hope I've addressed that, because all I want to do is give some empathy to some vegans who are getting irate and stupid because you're just not educated, guys, you know. A combine harvester runs out, no, rodicides. And on top of poisoning rodents in the field, can I just say, these are vegan practices. Poisoning rodents is one, horrible practice. Insecticide, horrible practice. Birds eating them and poisoned, horrible. Larger mammals eating those rodents, horrible. They all get the same death, and I've seen that death, and it's rough, it's dark. We also plant early crops, and they're lure crops, and you lure pests in there so you can exterminate them. Then, when things go to storage, you still have the problem of rodents, and thus you have to then poison more again. Understand the journey of your food, you know, understand it, guys. Now, I'm not doing this to back carnism. I'm doing this to help the planet. Because as long as the vegan movement stays irate, unhinged, and ridiculous and immature like this, then there's no neutral dialect going to form. No one's going to be able to the sun's gone in. No one's going to be able to listen to you, because you're so irate and angry, you know. No one's going to care what you've got to say. Like, humans don't like that. If you scream in a child's face, they are less likely to learn what you're saying than if you lovingly tell them. Now, with Tim, let me say the following. First of all, many people are saying he's making fallacious claims about veganism. The sun's come back out. In which case, tell him, ask him about it, and wait for him to respond, you know. Say, hey, you should have tried this, and some are doing that, and I admire you for it, but others are like just attacking him like he's evil, and it's because you've got a mental health problem, guys. You've vegoed yourself. I'm morally superior because I'm vegan. If you believed in that stance that you're taking from your keyboard, you'd go and stand in McDonald's and you'd go around the tables telling everyone they're murderers, or the people in the supermarket queues. You know, you just would. You absolutely would. But it's just silly. We know that it's silly. So people are saying he's making flips. So have a dialect with Tim and say, hey, have you tried this? Did you try that? And people are, and people say he had a gut problem, and I agree. From those test results, he definitely should have been looking at some medical advice to address that. He still would, because he drinks a lot of water in nature, and you know, it's nice to do the natural thing, but there are reasons why For instance, you don't want to do that too much. I've had typhoid from water here in Tanzania. Believe me, you don't want to go that route. You really don't want to go that route. You're very grateful for purified tap water when you've had tap water in Tanzania give you typhoid. So to give you and giardia and amoebiasis and all of this stuff that I've had. You're very lucky back in the West to have those things. But you can pick stuff up, and you can get sick from it. So it should be looked into. And he's outdoorsy. He could have a early stage of Lyme going on with high IGs in your secretories. Then it's showing something with the immune system. So it should be looked at, and I agree it should be. And Tim is his own man. He'll find what he needs to do. Yes, he did urine therapy. I'm still on the fence about it a little bit because... like, people were telling me to give it a go, and I know the ancients used it for healing, but I'm taking herbal protocols and antibiotics for Lyme, and the resistant bacteria from Lyme go into your urine, the antibiotic resistant ones, so to drink it would give me super Lyme. So I'm not sure on the effect of that, and of course, the whole point of that is to look at the fact that obviously before he was doing those things, he felt unwell enough to do them. The long water fast is definitely going to benefit the body long term, but only if it's done correctly. And Tim will admit, I told him that he was breaking his fast wrong because he was in the fruit mindset. And I've done a lot of long fasts, 40 days, 33, 28, 35, 21. I've done a lot of long fasts, and I attest my ability to have done what I've done here in Tanzania to those fasts. It really changed me as a person, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. To do that was a profound turning point in my life. But during his refeeding time, I warned him there's a need for protein to rebuild your body, and the fruit's not going to give you it. You need to do something like, get some hummus in there, whatever it's going to be, nut butters, do something. But he was on the raw kick. So that definitely will have caused an effect, because I know from my first fast, which was 28 days, when I didn't do it, I had that weakness come over me. Now, I'm not saying the fast and the refeeding incorrectly is why he's eating animal products, because at the end of the day, Tim's trying to find a more natural route, and he's trying to find a way to harm the planet less without being locked into an ism. And as I've shown, eating one wild-caught salmon in the present vegan farming practices does cause less suffering and less harm, and arguably less environmental destruction. However, eating grain-fed beef, etc., or even, if you're eating in England, if you've got pasture-fed animals that are not being fed grain, is that ever going to be reforested? And if not, then you can say, okay, then actually that's probably kinder for the environment, because no one's going to cut any trees down. But when you look at caloric, I don't know the equations, but I'm sure that because of calories, it might not balance out so well. But he's trying to find a new way, and he hasn't said he's not going to be vegan again. He said he wants to be stronger, he wants to get better. And he's trying to do that more naturally than eating supplements. And it's not so damaging to the movement that he did that at all. Because if everyone's saying he made these mistakes and they've made their videos, then that's fine. But to point them out, it should speak for itself. But the problem is, it's the algorithm veganism. It's such a small niche world, YouTube. There's a lot of people don't even use YouTube. And Tim had the biggest clothing company known inside algorithm veganism. And he was well-known vegan movement in vegan movies. Do you really think that someone would just do it for the taste, etc.? Like, he knew he was going to get thrown under the bus, as they say. He knew what was going to happen. But he loves himself and his health, and he wants to feel well enough on this planet to do so. But it doesn't mean that he's going to go off and support things like what Cowspiracy speaks about. It really does not. And I think people need to get their heads around that. And you're listening to a vegan here, guys, but you're listening to one who's just got a little bit more maturity than the angry keyboard warriors, because I'm educated, and I try to grow food veganically here, and I see the problems, and I see it's impossible to not cause harm to other sentient life when I'm doing so. It's nearly impossible. With a true veganic farm, arguably maybe, but I'm still not sold on it, because I'm struggling to find ways. rats here eat my crops, rats here eat the food for my children, so what do I do? What do I do? Well, you know, what do? You have to kill them. I've put metal strips around all my trees, and I have over 100 rescue dogs. There's metal tubes around my tin sheets. The rats run up the tree, they fall down, the dogs eat them. It's just a little bit more natural, and the dogs get some food. Most of these dogs hunt and stuff anyway. If they see a rat, they're hunting lizards. You know, you can't stop them. It's just the way of the world here. The dogs are a bit more feral when you get them. They've got more instinct than Western dogs. But yeah, maybe you feel Tim made a mistake in his approach, but okay, have a mature dialect. Don't belittle him and call him names. And also at the same time, maybe wonder, you know, if Tim had some sort of infection and autoimmune problems, you're not educated on science if you think that everyone can just eat vegan to heal. Because as I say, you can start developing histamine intolerances, etc. I know I've started developing food allergies from my Lyme, and it's damn difficult to navigate, and it's terrifying to navigate sometimes as well, because you hear all these people who heal autoimmunity because they're reducing histamine by eating animal products. I'm thinking, good God, Lyme disease, don't push me in that direction. You know, it has to stop, guys, at the end of the day. And if you can get a planet, I don't know if I covered that properly earlier, if you can get a planet, if you want to reduce slaughter, people are more likely, I've got a bit scattered here, but people are more likely to come down to eating 20 to 10% animal product, the rest plants. Okay? You're better off having millions or billions of people doing that quickly than you are having a few 100,000 militant vegans that make themselves look like it's a cult. You are, because you're going to help the animals better. And this is the rationale of life. This is how it works. People will not. They're digging their heels in. People are not going to listen to the vegan message in this way anymore. And it doesn't help the way that it's been approached. I had a response from Joey Carbstrong, again using this emotive language, stabbing a cow in the throat, and I responded and said, what about you burning the guts out of rodents, you know? Like, we can all throw emotive language at each other, but it doesn't help. It also doesn't help, just for the record, I mean, I admire the passion of Joey and some of the work he's done, and I've defended him before, actually, against paleo person, just because they were mocking his history, because I've got a similar past to Joey, with crime and stuff like this, and drugs, etc. So I admire his change in life and his passion, but I think you need to really be careful you don't bring your old self into it, because you're going to damage the movement, you know, like I used to as well. But wearing black masks, even if you say it's for the cold, everybody knows in society, you know, what that represents. You know, everybody sees that as like a very intimidating appearance, especially when you're going to some form of activism. You know, if everyone else can manage without it, then you can. And it's all about this imagery we're putting out, and all about the stability at how the message is put across. You know, hate does not drive out hate, only love can do that, as Dr. King said. And it's true. But if you struggle with empathy and think that you're almighty and higher than thou because you're vegan and you don't cause any animal suffering, you'll look into pest control and you'll be shocked and heartbroken, and you'll start giving more thanks for the food you eat because you'll know the damage that you've done. And it's not just vegetables, grains, legumes, it's everything, guys, absolutely everything. You know, like everything is creating suffering. And I know veganism is about reducing that suffering, and of course if you use the same crops to feed animals, you're going to elevate the suffering even further. But it's not clear cut, like I say with the salmon's a good example. It's really not clear cut. So we should be more mature and patient with one another and have dialects about how to solve the problem. One thing I can see that could really change the planet is the introduction of insect consumption. Because you know, insects, they live a few days, most of them don't feel pain, and you wouldn't need to slaughter them, and the locals here eat a lot of them, and they seem to get a lot of good nutrition from them, but I don't know the nutritional content of insects. But something to look at, without a doubt, you know. I don't have any empathy for some insects. Ticks gave me Lyme disease. I just see them on my dogs. They've killed dogs. I've had about 26 rescue dogs in the last 3 years die of tick fever here. So I kill them, and I don't even flinch when I do it, but it's alive, you know. It's alive, but I don't care. I squish it and I kill it. If I see a poisonous snakes have killed my dogs. If I can't catch them and get them to the snake park, I behead them. I don't feel any problem with it, you know, I really don't. And I don't have any problem with my Masai friends suffocating goats so as they're out cold and then slitting their throat so as their children can eat. Because I love my son, and I know that if I was starving in the bush, and the truth of the matter is someone gave me a knife and a goat and said, you and your son are going to starve unless you kill it, I'd kill it. You know, I have killed before. I've lived and worked on farms when I was a teenager. And I've been involved in those things before. They're not pleasant memories, they're not great experiences to have in your mind, but I've done it, so I have that connection to food, and that's important. So anyway, I think I've spoke long enough. If you feel Tim has done veganism wrong, then talk to him. Some people are being very, very calm and polite in their approach. Julien has made some videos which are calm and polite. I haven't watched him for a while, but I admire Harley. Sometimes he's gets a little bit irate and passionate with people, but he's also quite a wise guy, even if I don't agree with his dietary advice all the time, you know, like the guy's a sugar craver because he's always burning calories persistently, you know, whereas all of a sudden for myself now I'm sedentary with my Lyme, I'm more hungry for fats and stuff because my body doesn't want too much jittery energy, you know. But just to say stuff like that, you know, like polite and mature. I saw a comment from Hench Herbivore that thanked Tim for what he'd done for the movement and hoped that he might come back to it or something like that. I admire that. That's community spirit. That's normal human behaviour, you know. But this irate nonsense, man, that's to stop. And this persistent abusive use of emotive language is not helping the movement either, I don't feel. So get educated. You know, the current vegan philosophy inside the algorithm vegans, the people who learn from videos and not from study or practical application, is definitely flawed because people are not well educated inside there. And I was one of them, and I got such a shock when I started having this farm here in Tanzania for the children. I got such a shock. So start looking at it with open eyes and addressing the new ways to protect the environment, to regreen the planet, and to start protecting our mother and reducing animal suffering to the maximum, you know. And at the end of the day, the best example I've given all video to have empathy for someone like Tim who's exploring a new avenue is that you, at least Tim, is consciously killing a salmon. You're ignorantly, in ignorance, most of you, killing rats, insects and birds and other mammals and thinking that you're morally superior. So when you understand that you're doing that, you can understand your target is the morally superior road for animal ethics and environmental ethics. But you're missing the target. You are missing the target if you're ill-informed, because you're just as unconscious as persons who you mock for supporting certain animal agriculture industries when you don't understand the plant industry that you're feeding yourself from. So get educated, and the only reason I say that is not to promote carnism or this, is to say we need a new dialect here, guys. We need to find solutions, you know, and being dramatic one side, dramatic the other, is really not finding solutions. It's not, you know. The arguments are getting too intense. And I think one important thing I'm noticing is that a lot of people who have very negative personality traits express them via veganism as if just the fact that they're vegan allows them to be okay. It doesn't. It doesn't. Stop abusing the movement to do that. So I'm now on the fence about what's best for the planet. I definitely think animal agriculture should end en masse. I definitely see from the West that it's a terrible thing and it needs to stop. But I definitely see that the farming practices we're using are not great. And I definitely see that protecting the environment is not as straightforward as let's just eat plants. So let's discuss that, let's research that, let's see the algorithm vegans start addressing that side of it as well, instead of just, you know, the same sort of science over and over again. Let's look at the other side of it. Because if you care about animal suffering, then you can lobby to stop animals having their guts burnt out so as you can eat some broccoli. And you can stop them using bird meal and bone meal to fertilizer. You know, there's just so much more to it, there's such depth to it. But you're never going to understand the depth if you're volatile and irate. So, right. I think that's covered it. I love you all. I probably is a little bit scattered and sporadic because I'm just out of 18 days of hell from mast cell activation, but I wanted to get it out there. And I'll start doing more videos showing you some of the veganic practices that we're implementing here, starting this week by putting up the new gate to fence off the forest, which is a very exciting time for me. So, happy days. I hope in future, by the way, that forest we'll be able to build temporary shelters down there, raised tree houses, so as we don't have any issues with leopards and stuff like this, and be able to invite people to come and help us with this food forest as volunteers. Obviously, fundraising to come and do it, so as we can build on this food forest idea, and all of these disused and abused valleys in Tanzania can be converted into something beautiful to produce food for children and men and women who very much need it. So, I love you all. God bless. A lot of love and respect for Tim, for his bravery in doing what he's done, and a lot of love and respect for all of those in the vegan movement that were saying don't hate Tim. And I still have love and respect for an understanding for those of you who are getting emotional and hating on Tim, but I don't respect or love the way that you are expressing yourself at all. It's just not good. And the current form of veganism is definitely not the solution for the planet, guys, because there's too much ignorance in it. You know, there has to be a new way of looking at this. There are better things for the planet than supplements like mollusks, and they're not sentient. Why don't we discuss that? Why don't we think about that? You know, you can give muscles to, you can farm muscles, give muscles to people not sentient, and then you don't have millions of plastic bottles. You know, I'm sick of it. I'm sick of all the vegan videos. Oh, new vegan meat wrapped in plastic. It's like, well, what's better? That or the local eggs from down the road? Really, it's a difficult grey equation, grey area of equation to work out. So, as for Tim's health, I hope it continues to improve. And for those of you with any advice for Tim on how he might have been able to do plant-based better, then share it with him. But share it with him. Share it with him like you would someone in your face, face to face. You know, don't tell someone to kill themselves, because if you daresn't do that to the people in the supermarket buying meat around you, you're a coward and a hypocrite. Stand by your morals. The person you are in reality is the person you are online. It's very hard to do. I've made videos about my YouTube ego, etc. It's very difficult to do. But if you're not who you are in reality on YouTube, then you don't know who you are. And social media is causing you a problem and you need a sabbatical. I love you. Bye.